What's up, everyone? Welcome to another rendition of the Narrative Avengers series. My name is James Hayes. I'm the his. I'm the co-director of Ohio Voice, and we're excited to be spending time with y'all this afternoon, talking about the things that are important to us this year as we go out and vote. Um, this is the final weekend for early voting. Can we cue the early vote early sticker? Vote early. There it is. Vote early. Make sure you're getting out to cast your ballot. We're making a plan to vote on election day. We only have a little less than a week now to make our voices heard. And I'm really excited to be joined today by three experts who can help us understand what's going on in our election this year. Um, every year, there's obviously candidates that we get a chance to vote for, and then some years there are issues that are on the ballot. This year, one of those issues that would propose constitutional amendment, issue one, would would have some impacts on how we approach bail across Ohio. And as a lot of you know who are watching, there's been a movement for the last several years to reform how we approach bail, to make sure that folks are not being held behind bars just because they can't afford bonds and to get out. We haven't had debtors prisons in a long time in the Western world, but for some reason we still have a lot of people locked up simply because they can't afford to pay some fines and fees. And we're going to hear more about the context for how issue one came about, what this would even mean. As far as I looked into the language, just to be clear about what I was reading, and there were two things I would require. One was for Ohio judges to consider public safety when they're making judgments about bail, something I believe every judge already considers and already does every day as they do their job. And the other would remove the requirement that the Supreme Court determine the procedures and processes by which bail is set. So that's all I know. And we're going to bring on a couple people who know a lot more than me. So really excited to have Emily Cole from Ohio Families United, Jeremy Cherson from the Bail Project, and Celina Coming from the ACLU. We're going to take a moment to give each of you a minute just to let folks know who you are, how you got involved in this work, before I ask you what's going on with issue one and why do we need to be understanding it and watching out for it. So I'll start with you, Emily, because you're top of screen for me. You just take a moment to introduce yourself and how you got involved in this type of work.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on today. It's really an honor. My name is Emily Cole. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the executive director of OFU PAC, which stands for Ohio Families Unite for Political Action and Change. We are the action fund of Ohio Families Unite Against Police Brutality, and everyone on my board is directly impacted by gun violence, incarceration, and/or police brutality, many of them, all three, in different ways. And so I've been working with Sabrina Jordan, who founded and is the CEO of Ohio Families United Against Police Brutality for several years now. And she and I really wanted to kick it up a notch on the policy side of trying to create a better Ohio for all of our families, no matter what they look like or where they live or what kind of street they're on. And so we co-founded the C4 OFU PAC earlier this year, and in less than a year have found ourselves getting to join this kind of a live stream event. So it's an honor to be here.
It's great to have you here, Emily. Just make sure this is the C3 side of the conversation, but we're
Yes.
grateful to have you here today. Pass it over to you, Jeremy.
Hey, everybody. My name is Jeremy Cherson. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor at the Bail Project. Glad to be here, so thanks for the opportunity. So the Bail Project is a national nonprofit that operates revolving charitable bail funds in states and jurisdictions across the country. Revolving charitable bail funds are services that pay bail for people that are too poor to pay it themselves. We pay that bail. We offer supportive services to people once they're released, like text message reminders and travel assistance. We also try to refer them to different social service providers who can help them meet various unmet needs that they have. And alongside that direct service work, we also operate a policy department that I'm a part of. That policy work is built around trying to achieve system change and legislative change. So we work and have been working for a long time in Ohio to try to advance progressive legislation and reform that looks to either severely curtail the use of cash bail or to eliminate it altogether. We do that because we understand bail to be an injustice, something that creates a two-tiered system of justice where people who are too poor to pay will remain in jail and people that have resources can get out. We also see it as just an entirely short-sighted policy, public policy. Cash bail is not a solution to the concerns that everyone should have about public safety and about equity. And there are better, more practical solutions, and we're trying to help jurisdictions across the country, including in Ohio, understand what those can be. And there is some promising work happening in Ohio. It's just been completely broadsided by this misguided constitutional amendment. So looking forward to talking to you all about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Celina, I'll pass it over to you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Celina Coming, she, her pronouns. I'm the communications director for the ACLU of Ohio, and we are proud to work in very close partnership with OFU PAC and the Bail Project in stopping Issue 1. The ACLU is a statewide nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we work to defend and expand civil liberties and civil rights for all people in Ohio. And bail reform, actual bail reform, has been one of our main campaign issues for the last 5 years and counting. So as soon as Issue 1 came about, we realized that this was kind of hijacking the common sense policy solutions that our team has been working on for many years, and happy to be here and explain the difference between bail reform as we knew it and what Issue 1 has turned out to be. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's kind of where I want to start. So maybe we'll stay with you since you can be first this time. Just can you maybe share a little bit about like why is Issue 1 on the ballot right now? What would it mean for us, and sort of what's some of the history of the bail reform movement in Ohio that this is derailing?
Yes, definitely. And Jeremy and Emily, please feel free to jump in, especially Jeremy on the policy side. Issue 1 started as 2 joint resolutions in each chamber in the Ohio legislature back in May, came out of nowhere in an attempt to reverse a Supreme Court decision, DuBose v. McGuffey, that was issued in January of 2022. And this is something that is closely related to the Ohio Supreme Court races. So we'll stay in the C3 lane, but we really just see this as a political ploy. It's just partisan politics as we know it. Has really nothing to do with policy, and it's a talking point about public safety for the election and for the candidates on the Republican side of the ticket. So this disrupted HB 315 and SB 182, which are the bipartisan bail reform bills that have broad support across the political spectrum, from the conservatives to liberals, everything in between. Law enforcement officers support HB 315, faith groups, legal professionals, nonprofit organizations. It has 90 organizations across the state who supported these common sense bail reform bills that were really kind of under siege, under attack at the forefront of Issue 1. So Jeremy, do you want to jump in from there and add anything that I left out?
I think you did a really good overview of how we got to where we are today, and the fact that Issue 1 has completely broadsided an actual attempt at reform that was underway in Ohio. I think when we think about how bail is supposed to be used and what its purpose is, the idea that it be used for public safety is just a complete fallacy. It's a short-sighted thing. It's something that judges might want to defer to, and we agree that public safety needs to be a consideration. The limitation we have is that it is not an effective way to deal with public safety. The reason we were talking about, and Celina was introducing the ideas of House Bill 315, Senate Bill 182, the reason those bills had so much support was because it set up a series of procedures that needed to be put in place before conditions of release were set, or before somebody was preventatively detained. You know, if somebody is actually a danger to a society, to another person, there are other methods that a judge should use to protect those people. And those can include conditions of release like GPS monitoring or home detention, or who knows what else, supervised release. Or it could look like actually preventatively detaining somebody, something that should be used very limitedly. And I think when we think that cash bail is the solution to that problem, it's just a ridiculous idea. Cash bail doesn't keep people safe. Rich people can pay it, go out and do harm. That happens. And it tends to create this sort of, it is one of the primary drivers of mass incarceration across the United States. It is one of those things that leads to what we would refer to as unnecessary incarceration, something where somebody who would otherwise be safe, who could be released, who would not get any kind of additional criminal involvement, would just go out and return to court and dispose of their case like any normal person. So I think that Celina's right that this is political opportunism. It's an attempt to drive people to the polls. It's an attempt to capitalize on a lot of fear mongering. And ultimately, the reason it's so discouraging is because it has the potential to completely undermine and block the actual meaningful change that Ohioans deserve. And that's something I think we should all be concerned about. There is no path where issue 1 passes and, you know, that's it. That is not a solution for Ohio. It's a doubling down on a broken system that already exists that led to mass incarceration and would only perpetuate it and make it worse. And just to be clear about something, judges do consider public safety currently. When they do consider public safety, though, they can preventatively detain people. There are some limitations and challenges with that, with it as it currently is. But this constitutional amendment doesn't remedy those problems. House Bill 315 would, and that is why Ohioans should be supporting that and promoting it, and definitely voting against issue 1.
Thank you. Yeah, Emily, anything you wanted to add about, I don't know, just reflecting on what Jeremy and Celina said?
The only thing that I think we haven't touched on a lot yet is that public safety is 100% being used as a dog whistle in this ballot language. And that is a very clear attempt. And it's a kind of a landmark for all of us working in this space to know that the intent 100% is partisan, and that it was written in such a way where it's supposed to instill a certain reaction from voters at the ballot box. And so I think that every single time we can call that what it is, we need to. And it's very important on any side of the issue to make it clear that this is an attempt to demonize Black, brown, and lower income communities. So I did just want to add that, and also add in that I think that anyone who thinks that this is a solution and that there are all these people out there talking about crime and criminals. I was asked on a podcast yesterday about well, what about the criminals and what about the crime? Quote unquote crime, in my opinion, is a failure of society. That is a lack of resources in a community and a lack of investment led to the circumstances that led to that instance. So I would say that anyone who wants to actually work on public safety and reducing crime should be working on fully funding our communities.
No, that's an amazing point, especially with the state budget coming up next year, and so important. Thank you for bringing that up, because as we know, we're coming into this election, and dog whistle politics is one of the main strategies that the right wing uses to divide us along lines of race, ethnicity, sexuality, particularly in this context, using racial dog whistles to give red meat to their base, to divide working class people against each other. And we see that time and time again get in the way of real progress on a lot of different fronts. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. And I'm just wondering, because it does seem, and we've seen this before. I remember I think it was 2004 when there were a number of anti-gay marriage constitutional amendments put up on state ballots. Karl Rove was behind that strategy as a means to boost turnout for that election. I'm wondering, because it seems that there's really limited policy impact from this. So like, what if this passes? What would it actually mean for Ohioans if issue 1 passes? It seems like it is mainly just like a sort of a racial dog whistle mobilization tool in some cases.
I'll jump in. I think at minimum, it just is status quo. Things don't change. At worst, it leads to an expanded use of cash bail to deal with in all first appearance hearings, and it dramatically expands the number of people who are incarcerated pre-trial because they can't afford to pay. That's the biggest concern. It's a valid concern. It's something that we should all be very worried about. And I think to the points being made about dog whistle politics and fear mongering, really, is the truth that people's concern about bail and bail leading to crime is overstated, overblown. It's not statistically proven. It's just something that's said. And also, we are seeing, the concerns about crime are not totally accurate or fair. Like in Cincinnati, we're seeing major crimes down, murders down 15% from 2021, robberies down from 2021. In Cleveland, murders down, felony assault is down, rape is down. Those are the ones that, cops tend to focus on and say are the big crimes that we need to worry about. So I think that you will hear from prosecutors always that, public safety, we need to be worried, crime, blah, blah, blah. The truth is, Bail Project bails people out every day. We've bailed out, let's see, in Cincinnati, we bailed out 271 people. In Cleveland, we bailed out 721 people. In both of those places, the people have appeared at 93 or 94% of all of their court appearances without any kind of other incident. In Cincinnati, 44% of those clients had their cases dismissed. That means that had we not intervened, those people would have sat in jail longer, only to have their case ultimately dismissed. That's what I mean when I talk about unnecessary incarceration. If issue 1 passes, you're going to see unnecessary incarceration blow up like that. You're going to see more of that 44%, more people who would otherwise have their cases dismissed or would have their cases acquitted at trial, or who would plead out to a charge simply to avoid the traumatizing effects of being incarcerated. That happens all the time. People who are incarcerated pre-trial have worse outcomes than people who are released pre-trial because they're in jail, because they'll take guilty pleas, because they're separated from their families or they're losing opportunities to work, and the desperation is real. So, when we talk about public safety, we should be also fair to say the safety of people who are incarcerated matters as well. That is something they're not a population we just get to forget about. And I think when folks promote an idea like issue 1 as a matter of public safety, they totally neglect that idea. They don't care that huge swaths of the population of people who are incarcerated could be released without incident. I think it's a travesty that we're moving in this direction. It's really upsetting.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, and Emily, I know your organization, y'all work with families every day who are deeply impacted by these things. And so we just think about the human toll. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to what is some of the impacts that that y'all see of this unnecessary incarceration, of the impacts of the system.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit towards that. To Jeremy's point, it absolutely plays into the trauma that folks in our communities experience. That is a trauma. Incarceration is a trauma, whether you're quote unquote supposed to be there or not. That is a trauma, and it affects everyone in that person's circle. I mean, folks who are detained pretrial, they face risks with their custody, they face risks with their job, with their ability to pay for their rent and their housing. Some of those folks, they are the primary breadwinner in their family. I mean, who's going to watch their kids, feed their pets? These are people first. And I think that so often politicians in our state, on any side of the aisle, forget that we're talking about real people. And I would say probably the best part of being part of this project for me has been how many real people Sabrina and I have talked to, and all of our different impacted leaders have talked to across the state, who've said, thank you for even just showing up on this issue and listening to our experiences. We didn't know. I've talked to so many people who said, I didn't know that someone else had experienced pretrial detention the way we did. And hey, if this passes, this was my experience 20 years ago, how would it have been different? Right? Better bail reform is possible. And I would urge anyone listening to this and anyone in your circles to demand that of the people that we have in power here in Ohio, because we deserve it. We deserve communities that are safe for everyone and not just for those in power. We deserve better bail reform, and all of us deserve to be fully represented and seen in our full dignity as human beings.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So one of the questions we've been asking everybody is, how would you explain your issue to a 7-year-old? So Celina, I'll start with you. And then we can go around the horn. If you were talking to a young person today, explaining to them why they should vote no on issue 1, what would you say?
This is such a great question. So my analogy here is, I'm talking to a 7-year-old. So to this, these 2 first graders, and I'm saying, imagine if you and a friend both got in trouble during recess for running into the parking lot without a proctor present. Okay. You both get in trouble. You both get told you have to stay after school for a detention, except your friend happens to have more lunch money on him. And so he doesn't have to stay after school for detention because he had extra money in his locker that his parents gave him or he had from his allowance. So he gets to, get out of detention free and says, see you later. You're stuck in detention all by yourself just because you didn't happen to have, lunch money from your parents or from your grandparents or your piggy bank. And that is not fair at all. You both ran into the parking lot together. So how come just because he had a little bit of extra lunch money, he gets to go home and play with his friends after school? And that is essentially issue 1 in a nutshell. It is guilty until proven wealthy. So.
Wow, that's so powerful. Guilty until proven wealthy. Yeah. I don't know if any of you have anything to add to that. I feel bad asking you to go next because that was such a good answer. But yeah. And it's interesting because young people today are different than when I was growing up. They're really tuned in and listening to this stuff. They might teach us a thing or two about these issues. But yeah, so anyway, I really appreciate y'all being here with us today. Before we leave, y'all have any final thoughts, closing thoughts, reflections on sort of this issue and where things are heading from here? Things you're hopeful for?
I'll jump in quickly to say, I think the difficulty with this issue is that it's being reduced to, it's public safety. This is so simple. Just vote on the thing. And obviously judges should be able to consider public safety, which, by the way, they already do. I think that issue 1, if it passes, has a clause in it that says, we have to defer to the legislature to decide what to do actually, how to actually implement this thing. And Ohio cannot be satisfied with issue 1 alone if it happens to pass. It would just lead to all the consequences we're saying. So there needs to be a follow-up demand if that happens, where we say, this is an unacceptable change. This is not a solution to the problem that we have. We still need real bail reform. So folks should not think or let politicians or lawmakers just coast on this after this, if it passes. They cannot just be satisfied with this as a solution. And so I would encourage anybody on this call to understand that the challenge with representing this issue to a 7-year-old is it's an extremely complex system. And when we try to talk about the bail system like it's simple, we lose a lot of clarity and we lose a lot of opportunity to actually create the reform we need. Real reform cannot be achieved in this lazy fashion of changing 2 lines of text in a constitution and saying that does it. So I would definitely encourage folks to stay in the fight if this happens to pass, and to really demand from folks ongoing pressure, that they actually push for change that matters.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know, Celina, Emily, any final thoughts that y'all have as we move to wrapping up?
Yeah, just no matter what happens on November 8th, the fight for actual bail reform continues until December 31st at the strike of midnight. The legislature is coming back. We're going to have a wild lame duck, and organizations like the ACLU Bail Project, OFU PAC, will be pushing for the best possible policy solutions that we can, aside from whatever happens on Election Day.
And I would just jump in on the back of that too and say that, like, our organization, and I know the ACLU does this and quite a few others, the Bail Project, we want the legislature to hear from you, not from us. And so, like, we're doing things like testimony training workshops. We're working with folks on like practicing their speaking and getting comfortable with saying what they need to say in the way they want to say it. And so I would encourage anyone who is paying attention and not sure where to start or wants to be involved either pre-election or post-election, like, we're here for you, and we want you heard because your voice needs to be in those spaces. So definitely, like, I have hope. We've had great conversations across the state over the last couple of months on this issue with real people who see what's going on and want to get involved. And I would say that should be true for all of us. We should always be wrapping more people into the movement. So it's great. I feel encouraged regardless of Election Day.
Awesome. Yeah, the fight will continue no matter what. But make sure you vote. Voting is very important, but obviously it's not enough. Vote early if you can. And it's really good to know that there's still going to be work going on through Lame Duck trying to pass. Remind me the legislation, House Bill 315?
Yes.
Okay, House Bill 315. What are ways that folks can stay in the loop, or where can they go to get involved and to follow for more information?
For the ACLU, I'll plug aclu.org/action. That's where you can sign up to be on our action team. And through that channel, we'll be promoting all the ways to plug into the lame duck fight. We're also hosting a webinar on November 10th to recap the entire election with our policy team, break down what happened. So you'll find information on our social media channels of how to register for that webinar.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all for being here, Emily, Jeremy, Celina. Thank you for sharing your expertise, your wisdom on this issue. One of the things I know keeps a lot of us from voting is feeling like we don't know enough about what's going on. We don't know enough about the issues. We don't have enough context to make decisions. And so I thank you for bringing that context here and sharing your wisdom so the folks can feel more confident as they step into the ballot box. The work you've been doing and are continuing to do. Keep it up, and I hope you get some rest after the election. And before Lame Duck picks up too much.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening and paying attention for this whole 28 minutes thus far. We're really excited that the election is near. I'm really grateful to be to have had a chance to talk with so many great leaders thus far about the work that they're doing to make a difference this November. Make sure that you go out and cast your ballot. Make sure that you go out and vote early if you can. And make sure you stay engaged after the election, organizing your communities, getting involved in Lame Duck, and make sure that you vote no on issue 1. It's nice on the C3 side to have something that we can do. Make sure you vote no on issue 1. Very exciting. So, all right, y'all. Hope you have a great rest of your Thursday. Thank you all.